Welcome to Week in Review. If this is your first time, I want you to know we are honored to have you as a part of this journey. Every week, on a Monday, we take time and we look back and then we look ahead. And we want to be as sons of Issachar. This was a nucleus that surrounded David, who understood the times with knowledge of what to do. And we want to do the same in our day. We're living in a day of escalating darkness. We're living in a time where we want to be like Daniel was. In Daniel chapter 1, verse 8, it says that Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. And we don't want to either, in the midst of the encroaching darkness, in the time where we see with the White House, the House of Representatives, the Senate, it can be one-party rule almost, and there are things coming down the pike that are very dangerous to the history of this nation and our future. Now, Jesus said, when you put your hand to the plow, don't look back. And he was talking about following him, and that's, I trust, our commitment. But there are times where it's good for us to look back, as we're going to do on the Week in Review, what's been going on in our culture, and then to analyze things from a biblical worldview. So what's been going on? And then we'll look ahead. You know, recently there has been such an attack on truth in our culture. I majored in college at Cleveland State University. I majored in communications. And, you know, when you took courses on journalism, whatever it was, I remember, I got my diploma. Here it is from Cleveland State University. And what they taught us in journalism and in communication was what? They said that you want to make sure that you are documenting your facts and verifying your sources. Today, we're living in a day where that's thrown out the window. We're living in a time where really everything is biased and slanted, and instead of people being an announcer of truth, they're activists for their side, what they want in terms of pushing a narrative. And there's a tremendous book that I have recommended by Cheryl Atkinson. She worked for CNN and CBS and NPR. And you know what? Our public broadcasting, that's what she worked for 33 years, and she was committed to the truth. But she says today we're seeing slanted, we're seeing media corporations that are run by a certain number of people, elites, and that they do is they want to put forth what they want you to believe and the story that, they want you to imbibe. And so it's kind of like George Orwell, if you remember in his book, 1984, he talked about doublespeak. When people are conscious of the truth, but what they do in a calculated and clever way, they put forth lies. And that's what we're seeing today. Unfortunately, journalism is not what it's supposed to be, and we are suffering. People say, well, anonymous sources said. What does that mean? And so we see in the New York Times and Washington Post, we see things put forth that are then going across the country. We see media companies like Viacom and AT&T and Disney that are controlling a lot of these media outlets, and then the stories go nationwide. But you've got to be able to look and say, is this true? All right, let's take a look at some things right now. Recently, maybe you saw a commercial on TV, a popular artist, the boss, they call him, Bruce Springsteen. He doesn't usually do commercials, but he may have gotten, who knows, $2, $3, $5 million. And it was a commercial where they were talking about buying a Jeep. And what they were selling was, you like Bruce, you kind of travel to the middle of the country, and it's time for unity, for recognizing there's differences, but we can come together in unity. It was a playoff of what Joe Biden said in his inauguration. But the thing that was just disingenuous about it, if you know Bruce Springsteen and you followed him in any way, he's a strong liberal or leftist, and he will trash people. Man, what he did to the former president at times, it was, use of profanity and sickening statements and all of it. And I'll leave if he gets elected. I'm going to, Australia or whatever it is. So when you see a commercial like that, you've got to be discerning, and you've got to have keen sense of discernment to recognize, is this truth? Is this a guy that's just being paid to bring forth some message? Or is this reality? How about recently, we hear all over the place that the Republicans are blocking the stimulus package. You've heard it for weeks and weeks. And they're saying, yes, a stimulus package that was, going to be put forth by Mr. Biden. $2 trillion to bring relief regarding the COVID virus. And if you look at that amount and you break it down with 330 million Americans, you say, well, that would be actually about $6,000 a person. Well, supposedly it's going to be $1,200 a person. So you should rightfully ask, with discernment, where is the rest of the money going? Well, is it going for virus stimulus relief? Well, I did a little study, and you can go on their website and you can look at HR 748, and we'll put it on the screen. But let me ask you this. Is this virus relief? You know where money's going? $300 million is being used for migrant assistance, for refugees. Listen to this, $10,000 per person is proposed for student loan bailout. $20 billion for the post office, $300 million for arts, $30 billion for what? The Department of Education Stabilization Fund, whatever that is. $300 million for NPR, National Public, Radio. How about $500 million for museums and libraries? $25 million for for cleaning supplies for the Capitol building. $25 million for House of Representative salaries. That's interesting. And how about $1 billion for airline recycling programs? What does this have to do with the virus? Well, you've got to be discerning and assess things today. And we've got to recognize that there are things being put forth and we need to be alert to them so we can speak up and we can also vote properly. There's other things that are happening right now. You know, in California, many of you maybe have relatives there, and you're aware that Governor Newsom is facing a recall. It's a reality. Get over that 1 million signatures and they can recall him. And he's reached a place where people are fed up and he's so unpopular. But you know, I looked at what the Democratic Party is saying in terms of stipulations. And these are the rules in terms of the recall. And you can look at them and it says, there will be no mail-in voting and no illegals are going to vote. There has to be strict IDs, no double count. You go down the line and you say, wait a minute. They are so meticulous in this, but these are the very things that with Donald Trump running against Biden were thrown out the window by Democrats. Again, are you being discerning and are you seeing and recognizing what's going on? How about this? There is appointment time. Mr. Biden is appointing people for positions, and he's putting somebody in office that is going to be the Assistant Secretary of what? Health. In other words, somebody that should speak and proclaim and model a healthy lifestyle. Well, he has selected an individual, Dr. Levine, and Dr. Levine for 50 years, I'm just stating the facts, was a man. His name was Richard. And then after about 50 years or whatever it was, he decided to identify as a woman. And Martha, his wife, divorced, goodbye. And so now Dr. Levine has his children. He said it's insulting if you start talking to him about these kind of questions. He takes voice lessons, allegedly. But you know what? You need to be looking at this and saying, what's going on in our culture? Is this really a model? Is it of what we want in terms of the Assistant Secretary of Health for healthy living? How about some other things that are going on right now? How about the Capitol Wall? Now, I lived in D.C. for 24 years, and it was always such a beautiful place where you could walk and stroll around and go in. And yes, there was a riot on the Capitol, but I think it's interesting, and let's be honest, Nancy Pelosi, and those she led for 4 years, was so rigorous and aggressive and assertive in saying walls don't work, and it's immoral to put up a wall. This is not America. And the resistance was there. Well, all of a sudden, with this riot, now we have a giant wall. Can take you, what, an hour to 2 hours to walk around? It's about 12 feet high. There's razor wire. There's tight security. There's armored vehicles. It's anchored. You have to have specific ID. And it's there for what? A wall for protection. Well, it seems like our former president wanted to bring that forth for all of us to protect from those that would be breaking the law and coming into the country. But that was thrown out the window. But now we're supposed to say, oh, no, it's all okay. And almost overnight, this was put up. Well, I'll tell you, this is an hour in which we have to stop and assess what's going on. Let me give you one more. I think it's interesting. Have you noticed that Amazon is building a new headquarters in Virginia? And I lived in Virginia when I was in the DC area. But you know what's interesting? If you look at it, the headquarters, and we'll show you a picture of it, it looks like the Tower of Babel or Babel in Babylon. You remember that? And what does Babylon come from? Well, the root word is Babel or confusion. And Babylon represents building a system, whether it's political, religious, or economic, apart from God. And when God saw what the individuals wanted in Genesis, it says he came down and you know what? He stirred it all up, broke it all down, and he scattered the people and the language because that was displeasing. And this whole idea of a grand reset now where it's going to be a one world government and man is going to do it, socialism without God, we need to know what's going on and be discerning. We need to know what is the truth and have on the biblical worldview lens and be able to say, I stand for truth, and winsomely and uncompromisingly, I'm going to share it.